The title of this video: The strongest alien fleet found her alone. That was enough. After Earth's fall to the unstoppable Varkari fleet, only one figure remains, Rose, a mysterious, lone survivor untouched by extinction. As the alien armada returns to investigate the anomaly, they find her awakening ancient technologies buried beneath the planet's surface. But Rose is more than human. She is the vessel of a long-forgotten power tied to a civilization that predates even the Varkari. As she reclaims her purpose and calls forth the memory of the stars, the strongest fleet in the galaxy is forced to stop, not by force, but by recognition. They found her alone. And that was enough. Ash drifted across the dead plain like slow-moving snow. The sky, a slate curtain of storm-gray clouds, hung low over the skeleton of a ruined city. Crushed towers slumped like broken teeth. Static flickered in the air. Silence reigned, not the calm of peace, but the aftermath of something absolute. Rose stood at the center of it all. She looked small against the shattered horizon, a lone figure in a fitted black suit laced with silver thread that pulsed faintly beneath the dust. Her auburn hair stirred in the dry wind, the only color that hadn't been bleached by the apocalypse. Beneath the surface of her skin, something stirred, something ancient, awakening by degrees. But outwardly, she remained still. Watching. There was no one left to speak to. No one left to hear her. The world had ended 40 days ago. Earth's final resistance was incinerated in a single orbital strike, not by chance, not even by overkill, but by precision. The Varkari fleet had swept through the solar system with surgical efficiency, consuming defenses, suppressing signals, and vaporizing any lingering hope. Yet here she was. The aliens had calculated it all, every city reduced to ruins, every bunker penetrated, every ship dismantled or left to drift in dead orbit. Their scanners had marked the planet inert. But one anomaly remained. Her. The wind howled through rusted beams and broken glass, but Rose didn't flinch. She had not moved for hours. A memory played in her mind, unbidden. The last scream of her commanding officer. The moment the light swallowed the sky. The heat. Then, nothing. And then, she woke up. Alone. Untouched. She had wandered at first. Confused. Hungry. Cold. But the hunger faded. So did the need to sleep. Now, the world no longer felt like a cage but like a skin she was shedding. She tilted her head slightly. A shimmer broke through the clouds. Thin, at first. Then the sky cracked open like an eye blinking after millennia. And in that pupil, metal. They were coming back. Rose didn't blink. Above her, a single scout vessel descended, its form sleek and jagged like a blade turned to dust. Its thrusters sang with a frequency beyond human hearing, yet Rose heard it. Felt it. Every note coiled through her mind like a question she almost remembered how to answer. The ship slowed, hovering a few meters above the cracked highway. Dust plumed beneath it, but she didn't move. The underside of the hull folded open like a blooming, biomechanical flower. 3 figures emerged. They wore armor that pulsed with liquid light, their limbs too long, movements too graceful. Varkari soldiers, shock elite, bred not only for war, but for ritual. They regarded her in silence. No raised weapons. Just confusion. Calculation. One stepped forward. "You are not supposed to be alive." Rose said nothing. The alien tilted its head, a mechanical flicker shifting across its silver-blue eyes. "Are you aware?" Her eyes met his. The soldier staggered. His companions reached for him, but too late. He collapsed, hands clutched to his skull. Silent scream. No wound. Just collapse. The others froze. Rose took a breath. The first in hours. The air tasted electric. One of the remaining soldiers raised a weapon, but hesitated. Sensors on their wrist blinked erratically. The surrounding atmosphere spiked with anomalous readings. Their armor began to lose cohesion, glitches shimmered across their forms. Rose blinked once. They retreated. Not out of fear. Out of protocol. Uncertainty. She wasn't an enemy. Not a survivor. She was something else. In orbit, thousands of kilometers above, the Varkari fleet stirred. In their command citadel, a massive spire of obsidian steel tethered to a circular warship the size of a moon, the supreme strategist watched. Holograms flickered. Data poured across panels. Her image, a single human girl, stood in perfect clarity in the center of the war room. No tech signature. No heat. No psychic field, but she disabled a soldier's mind. One commander leaned forward. Terminate the site. Wait. The strategist raised a hand. His voice was a whisper wrapped in logic. She is not resisting. Not evading. She's waiting. The chamber fell into silence. Back on the surface, Rose knelt slowly. She placed one hand on the cracked concrete. A faint pulse echoed outward, a tremor so soft it passed beneath seismic detection. But underground, something shifted. Something that had been dormant for eons. Far beneath her, circuitry older than any civilization flickered to life. A pattern of energy responded, not to human touch, not to commands, but to identity. Rose opened her eyes. They glowed. Above, the scout ship recoiled upward, rising into the sky like prey startled by a predator it had never evolved to face. Rose stood again. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. Barely audible. Let them come. And in orbit, the strongest fleet in the galaxy began to turn. Not to conquer. But to understand what they had missed. And what now stood before them. Alone. The scout ship streaked into the upper atmosphere, a wounded thing despite having suffered no fire. Inside, its systems scrambled to process what had happened, data fractured, visual feeds corrupted, sensor readings contradictory. The ship's onboard AI, designed for clarity and precision, looped the footage of the girl, her unmoving figure, the fallen soldier, the pulse of impossible energy. Over and over, until it began to hesitate. In orbit, aboard the Varkari flagship Cavaraith, the supreme strategist stood alone before a vast projection. Rose's image flickered before him, captured from multiple angles. The strategist, called Vare, had studied 1,000 species. Catalogued extinction patterns. Monitored the unraveling of resistance across hundreds of worlds. Yet something about the human girl defied every known variable. She should not exist, one of his lieutenants said, voice clipped and uneasy. There is no record of surviving assets. And yet. She did not resist, Vare murmured. She invited observation. Across the bridge, the command staff fell silent. No one dared question the tone of fascination in their leader's voice. He gestured. Bring the destroyers to low orbit. I want full containment protocols around her position. She must not leave the surface. Down below, Rose remained still. She watched the sky as the clouds thinned, giving way to descending shadows, ships, vast and angular, humming with energy. The ground trembled as repulsor fields engaged. A ring of orbitals formed overhead like a halo of judgment. And still, she did nothing. Her thoughts were not of fear. They were quiet, calm, an echo chamber inside her mind where ancient instincts whispered. Symbols she had never learned now made sense. Sounds carried from ships miles above vibrated in patterns that felt familiar. Her fingertips brushed the earth again. The sensation was growing stronger. A new ship landed with delicate grace, larger than the last. From it emerged not soldiers, but a speaker. The Varkari were not sentimental. Their speakers were living conduits of command, biological instruments bred to make contact where weapons might fail. It hovered slightly above the ground, draped in flowing metal thread robes that shimmered like liquid dusk. You were not marked for preservation, it said, its voice dissonant, like chords struck out of harmony. Rose looked at it, unblinking. Neither were you. The speaker tilted its head, almost curiously. You are changed. I am remembering. The being hesitated. Remembering what? Rose's eyes flickered. What came before you? That made the speaker freeze. For a moment, it was less a machine of purpose and more something small. Uncertain. The words held weight not because of their threat, but because they hinted at something deeper, an origin the Varkari had long buried beneath conquest and rewritten memory. The speaker transmitted this exchange instantly to orbit. Vare watched the playback in silence. Her genome does not match the anomalies we expected, a technician reported. But her neural emissions mimic patterns we found in the Shal catacombs. Pre-Varkari era. Supposedly extinct. Artifacts don't emit consciousness, another argued. This is impossible. Vare's eyes narrowed. No. It's inheritance. On the ground, Rose walked past the speaker. It did not stop her. With each step, the surrounding wasteland began to respond. Cracked streets pulsed faintly underfoot. Beneath layers of rubble, dormant structures stirred. She was awakening the planet. Vare felt it even before the readings confirmed it. Subterranean power nodes, non-human in origin, now lit up in a pattern that spread outward in concentric rings. The Varkari had believed Earth to be a dead relic. But it had been sleeping. And she was the key. Back on the surface, one of the newer soldiers approached cautiously, weapon lowered. You are not hostile, he said, as if trying to convince himself. You are, activation. Rose paused. I am continuity. His armor flickered, receiving encrypted commands. His body tensed. Rose's gaze swept over him like a tide of pressure. The command signal died in his suit, overwritten. His weapon powered down on its own. He took a step back, eyes wide. I didn't. You can't override what came before you, she said gently. Not anymore. Above, a portion of the fleet hesitated. Some captains questioned whether they were witnessing a trap, others suspected the impossible. And a few, just a few, felt something stir in themselves. One destroyer captain disabled her weapons grid without being ordered to. She stared at the Earth projection and whispered, "She's not a threat. She's an heir." The network caught the whisper. Spread it. Amplified it. Rose stood atop a cracked monument now, the base of an old Earth-resistant statue. She placed her hand upon it, and the metal reshaped itself, rising upward in a slow spiral. Beneath her feet, a soft hum began to grow. She was activating more than ancient Earth technology. She was reaching outward. Calling. The speaker lowered its head. What are you summoning? Rose's answer was almost a whisper. Memory. The sky flashed, just once. Brief. Silent. Not a weapon. A signal. It went beyond the Varkari systems, past their interceptors, past the known bands of communication. To where things slept, waiting to hear a voice that had not spoken in 1,000 years. In orbit, Vare stared at the silent flash. Trace that signal, he ordered. But already he knew. It hadn't been sent by their systems. It hadn't come from a machine. It had come from her. And wherever it had gone, something ancient would be listening. The supreme strategist turned away from the projections. He did not speak the words aloud, but they burned through his mind all the same. They had found her alone. That was enough.
The ship broke through the clouds like a wound tearing across the sky. Nick watched from the ridge, heart pounding. Solon stood beside him, wings half spread, tense. The sleek, silver vessel cut through the atmosphere with practiced grace, unmistakably human in design. Blue stabilizers flared as it descended toward the valley, toward the crash site. He should have felt relief. Instead, cold unease crept up his spine. Solon growled low, the sound more warning than fear. Nick placed a hand on his side, grounding both of them. "It's okay," he whispered, though he didn't believe it. By sunset, a small crew had landed. They came in exosuits, visors reflective, voices clipped. Uniforms were the insignia of Orion Terra, the same megacorp that funded Nick's mission. At first, their relief at finding a survivor seemed genuine. They offered food, scanned him for injuries, even complimented his improvisation with the shelter. But when they saw Solon, everything changed. They froze mid-sentence. Words stumbled, eyes narrowed behind visors. One of the scientists murmured into a calm. Subject confirmed. Energy output exceeds projections. Nick stepped between them and the dragon. He's not a subject, he said sharply. A woman in a red-marked suit, clearly the leader, offered a practiced smile. Of course. We only want to observe. For safety. Solon hissed softly, his scales flaring with light. Nick felt the bond stretch taut. Beneath their feet, the moss recoiled. The planet itself seemed to reject their presence. Over the next 2 days, they set up camp beside the crash. Nick stayed close to Solon, watching the team more than they watched him. Drones buzzed constantly, scanning everything. They took samples from plants that had bloomed under Solon's presence. One night, Nick overheard them discussing bio-integrated weaponization potential. He felt sick. Solon's restlessness grew. He paced the perimeter, wings twitching, eyes always locked on the camp. That night, Nick dreamed again. A tower floating above clouds. Dragons circling it like guardians. A voice, low, reverent, whispered in his mind. They came from stars to bind the broken worlds. Then fire. Ships like blades. Screams. He woke sweating. The next morning, the team discovered the ruins. Barely a mile from the cave, buried beneath shifting rock and crystalline vines, an entrance appeared, perhaps revealed by Solon's presence. Ancient carvings glowed faintly as they stepped near. The scientists buzzed with excitement. Nick felt dread. He knew without knowing that the answers were in there. Against his better judgment, he followed them in. The chamber was vast. Vaulted ceilings arced into darkness, etched with symbols like stars in orbit. At its center stood a platform shaped like a flower's heart. A faint hum filled the air. When Solon stepped onto it, the symbols flared to life. An apparition appeared, tall, robed, eyes like nebulae. It spoke in a language Nick didn't know but somehow understood. This is the last breath of the first flame. If you are here, you are not too late. Visions surged around them. Dragons forming alliances with early civilizations, restoring planets destroyed by war. They weren't beasts. They were architects of healing, beings of balance. But something changed. Humans grew afraid. A single fleet, backed by corporations hungry for control, had declared them too powerful to coexist. Solon was not a pet, not an accident. He was a survivor. The last. The light dimmed. The vision ended. Silence hung heavy. Nick turned slowly, expecting wonder. But the Orion team was already in motion. They spoke in curt codes, restraint devices, containment fields, authorization for off-world transport. No, Nick said quietly. The woman in red looked at him, almost sad. You don't understand what this thing represents. I do, he said, voice still. Do you? She gestured. 2 guards advanced, guns humming. Solon let out a sound that cracked the air. Light exploded from his body. Pure, blinding gold. The floor shuddered. The ceiling wept dust. Nick felt the bond surge, no longer just emotion, but shared instinct. Run. They bolted down a side tunnel, ancient doors collapsing behind them as Solon's tail struck them closed. Energy sang through the walls. They didn't look back. Only when daylight hit their faces again did they stop. Nick collapsed to his knees, gasping. Solon stood tall above him now, larger than ever, eyes glowed with ancient fire. Behind them, the ruin sealed shut with a thunderous crack. Nick looked up at the dragon he now knew was never his to keep. And still, Solon chose to stay. You said,
The first starship to arrive wasn't Varkari. It had no markings, no engines visible to the eye, no hull to speak of, only a shape, vast and crystalline, humming in and out of phase with reality. It slid through orbit like a phantom returning home. The moment it appeared, the Varkari systems dimmed to silence. Entire command decks fell still, their lights fading, their machines frozen in awe or fear. Nothing had fired. Nothing had attacked. But every ship in orbit now knew the balance of power had shifted forever. On the surface, Rose stood barefoot upon the dark platform, her form suspended slightly above it, her hair drifting as though underwater. The lines of energy across her skin now pulsed in sync with the low harmonic thrumming from the ancient structures beneath the wasteland. Her face was still young, still human, but her eyes reflected galaxies. A breeze curled around her, carrying the scent of ozone and something older, like dust from a forgotten library. Rose lowered herself gently to the ground. The light from the platform did not fade. It followed her, tracing her steps, forming a symbol beneath her heels that none of the Varkari could read, but all instinctively feared. The speaker approached again, its form subtly altered by proximity to the foreign ship above. Its joints shimmered differently now, as if its body remembered something of its origin, reshaped by truth. It bowed again, this time not just to Rose, but to the presence she had called. "They are returning," it said. "They never left," Rose murmured. "They were simply waiting for one who could speak the first name." The ship above began to unfold, not like a weapon, but like a flower opening to sunlight. Petals of light and metal extended in perfect silence, forming structures that defied human geometry. From within, a beam of pure white descended. Not a weapon. An invitation. Rose stepped forward. The speaker made no move to follow. "This is as far as I go," it said. "We are designed to conquer, not to kneel." "You weren't designed," she said. "You were altered." It raised its head. "Will you undo us?" "No," she said quietly. "But I'll make sure no more are broken like you." She entered the beam. Her body vanished, not with the violence of teleportation, but with the grace of return. Inside the ship, there was no interior. No corridors or screens. It was awareness, vast, gentle, immediate. Rose stood in the center of it, yet also part of it. Memory came not in flashes now, but as a complete, seamless presence. She was not a chosen one. She was the final node in a system once built to keep peace between galaxies. Her awakening was never meant to be destructive. It was meant to be restorative. Through her, the long-dormant code of a starborn alliance flowed again. Species long thought extinct responded to the signal. Machines forgotten beneath planetary crusts began to pulse. Sleepers stirred in cryogenic temples orbiting dying suns. Rose's voice, human and not, reached across light years. And far below, the Varkari watched. Strategist Vaer stood alone on the command platform of Kavaraith, the vast warship now dimmed to a monument of stillness. The data feeds had stopped. Orders no longer echoed through the comms. He looked out at the earth, at the girl who had risen from ash, and now spoke with the architects of things even his empire had not dared remember. "She was alone," he whispered. "But not empty." The words weren't bitter. They were reverent. Then, a new signal rang out, strong, clean, simple. Not a threat. A call. Fleet by fleet, ship by ship, the Varkari engines powered down. Not from force, but choice. The conquerors had become witnesses. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy paused. Rose returned in a column of soft light. When her feet touched earth again, she carried no weapon. But when she looked at the sky, every warship remained still. A million eyes watched her, and in all of them bloomed the same thought: this is not someone we defeat. This is someone we follow. The ruins around her were no longer ruins. Structures rose, reshaped by memory and code. What had been a battlefield was now a beacon. What had been broken was now a beginning. Rose spoke only once that day, her voice quiet, but reaching everywhere. No more forgetting. And across the stars, memory awakened. "You said.